We're out checking the garden this morning, and I'm so excited. I have been waiting. I have a problem with labeling things. I didn't label my dahlia tubers as good as I should have, so I ended up having a box of dahlia tubers that I had no idea what varieties they were, so we just planted them. And this one has been so slow to bloom. It's been killing me because I didn't know what it was, and it finally opened. Isn't she pretty? I love the dinner plate dahlias. I'm like, oh, you're so beautiful. So it finally opened, so now I know this was the one that I planted here. My dahlias have been really slow to bloom this year, so I was so excited. She finally opened. Isn't it pretty? Dahlias are like my new obsession when it comes to gardening. We've been growing them for 3 years now, and I have so much fun. I love these big dinner plate they feel just like wild and shaggy to me. I love them. But my husband really likes these versions, a little more tight. These just kind of look cheerful to me. These just are like, I don't know, they just feel sunny and cheerful. I really love the dahlias. So this is my wildly overgrown cottage-ish area of the garden that I just kind of love, and it's just flowers galore. And then we've got the straw flowers that I also love. It's funny, as I tell you about each one, I'll be like, oh, this one's my favorite. No, that one's my favorite. I really just love them all. But what I love about the straw flowers is these babies hold really well as the cut flower in the vase, but they dry and they hold their color as a dried flower, which not all flowers dry well and hold their color. So I love harvesting a bunch of the straw flowers. Like, look at how bright these ones are. And so these will dry just like that and hold their color. So this is what I use to get me through the winter months when I have no fresh flowers to come in and cut. So I will be actually harvesting quite a few of these. I like to dry them when they're not all the way open yet, but when they're about this stage and that stage, they dry really well and hold their color. So I'll be coming out here and doing some of that. But we had a lot of rain is a little bit of an exaggeration. When you haven't had any rain for almost a month, any amount feels like a lot. But we had a decent soaking of rain yesterday and this morning. In fact, the misting rain just stopped, so I was able to come back out and kind of see everything. But I love the way it smells in summer right after it rains. Like, everything just feels fresh again. And the way the garden responds, like you can water with a sprinkler and you can get the same amount of water from rain that you would get from a sprinkler. And I swear the plants respond different when it's rainwater. So everything just feels perky again, including me. I have had 2 cups of espresso this morning though. So this is the garden. If you watched the Gardening with Wood Chips video that we put out just a couple of weeks ago, that was at the beginning of planting season. Here we are at the time of this filming, we're in mid-August. So all of the summer plants are coming on strong. I'm getting the last of the fall plants in, but I have to share a little update on the wood chip part. So typically in summer here, I live in the Pacific Northwest, we get a lot of annual rainfall. But during the summer months, after you hit July 5th, that's like a joke. Summer starts July 5th because it typically rains on July 4th here. July 5th hits and we can go sometimes maybe 1 day of rain, sometimes none, from July 5th all the way usually until about mid-September before we start to get our rain. And then it starts raining and just never stops unless it snows. So usually in the summer months when you go through July and August, we are having to water in the garden, especially if we're having days that are above 90, which we've had a lot of this year, in the high 80s and the 90s, somewhere right up around 100. Sometimes we have to water every night. Sometimes it's every other night, at least multiple times per week. Do you want to know how many times that we had to water the garden? And this is like the only second time we've gotten a decent amount of rain since the end of June. You guys, twice. I've watered the garden twice, and it is all lush. Nothing is stressed. I am very excited about the wood chips for the water issue alone. So I will still be measuring. We'll see. We could still have another stretch. We're in mid-August if we don't get any more rain. So I haven't given it my total number yet for this summer, but 2. I'm very amazed. Now, one of the things actually we were coming out here was to film lessons for my membership, which is the Pioneering Today Academy. So we have a whole gardening module in there where we walk through individual plants, everything from picking varieties to growing it to knowing the perfect time to harvest it. So we're out here doing some of those videos. I'm actually going to share that with you on the cucumbers. But I had to laugh because this is all of my winter squash. That is all of my summer squash. And the two are very much entwined. So when people talk about spacing when planting, there's a reason for it. I just tend to have some gardening rules that I choose to ignore because they don't impact the end harvest. They can impact, however, how easy it is to get between plants and harvest, or it's just more like an adventure hunt and you pretend you're in the jungle, which adds more fun to the day. So you get to choose which way you look at it. However, we are on our way to the cucumber trellis, which is over here. So here, now you may think this is a weed. This is actually lamb's quarter, which is very nutritional and is a great green. So I tend to just let my weeds, the beneficial ones, go, which I don't have very much of with the wood chips. There's a few areas where the wood chips weren't as thick, where we've had a little bit of weed, but I have done minimal weeding. So I've got this lamb's quarter that's come up, my calendula, which I love. And then we've got some purslane down here and some dandelion, which all are actually edible and beneficial medicinal herbs or medicinal weeds, whichever way you want to talk them. Medicinals, I guess, would be our category there. If you want to learn about the calendula, I've got a video showing you how to dry those, turn that into oil, and do lots of wonderful things in the medicine cabinet. So we'll link to that in the video description below. You can go and catch that video. Now, half of my trellis, this over here is black beans. So this is the Cherokee black beans. They don't look black yet because they're just not farther enough along. They're just starting to form their beans. And these will be our dried shelled black beans. They just don't look like it yet. They're in their infancy, but one of the ways you can tell is their blossoms are purple instead of white like my Tar Heel beans and the October beans. So I've got these guys over here, but I do have them separated. We've got 3 different varieties of beans in the garden right now. Beans are self-pollinating when it comes to seed saving. I've got another video on that, as well as an entire seed saving course inside the Pioneering Today Academy. If you're a member of that, go in and check that out. They are self-pollinating, which means that they don't require pollination from another bean in order to create the actual bean, the edible part that we're after. And when it comes to seed saving, you don't have to worry about them crossing. But the caveat to that is as long as they're not planted right next to another variety of bean. Because I have had, when I had them on the same trellis or just like one row over, they can start to cross a little bit. So if you want to keep your strains pure, which I do, because we have our heritage family strain that I can't get anywhere else, that we've been seed saving for over 100 years, then I need to make sure that they're planted far enough apart that they have a buffer. And I found about 20 feet apart seems to be enough of a buffer. One of the things I've done though is on the trellises that are more side by side is making sure the farthest side of the trellis is this variety of bean. I've got the cucumbers that are coming up on this side, and then the other trellis has tomatoes, and then it has beans. So they're still at the farthest part from one another. And with that, on self-pollinating plants, in my experience, as long as they're that far apart, I haven't had any crossing. Just quick little caveat there. We've got the dill, which is perfectly to have your dill growing right next to your cucumbers, which will become pickles. So for harvesting, knowing when to harvest your cucumbers, really any plant, is knowing the variety and type. So this is not an English cucumber. This is definitely a pickling cucumber variety. So with your pickling cucumber varieties, in order to have a crisp pickle, they cannot be overripe. If they're overripe, you're not going to have a nice crisp pickle. They're going to be soggy no matter what. Now, when making pickles and coming out to get your cucumbers, you do want to pick them in the morning or in the evening when it's cool in order to keep them as crisp as possible, but also knowing when to correctly harvest them. So first indication is looking at size. And so they always will start to grow. This is the older part of the plant that's more near the ground. And so we're going to come down here And this cucumber is definitely larger, right? Obviously, so this is size. These guys are larger than these ones. And so that's very typical. I always look at the base of the plant to get the older ones first, and then you'll see the newer ones coming up here. So these two, I'm gonna pick these. So they're still, what I'm looking for, especially with pickling cucumbers, is I'm looking that they are still green. I don't want anything that's really bloated. So I've got lots of like the little prickly spine areas and ridges on this. So see, there's still plenty of ridges. This part was in contact with the wood chips. It's very normal for the part that's in contact with soil, wood chips, etc. is gonna be slightly a different color. I actually like that. I know it's been developed and it's fine ripened. So to pick this, you're simply gonna come here to the stem, and we're just gonna pick that right off. Same thing with this guy. This one is good. I've still got spines and ridges, not quite as much of this one, but this one is good to go. And then see, here's the little tiny baby ones. Aren't they cute? These are obviously not big enough to bother with. Those we're gonna let grow, but we're going to pick these ones. And it's a good idea to come out and pick these once they get this size, because the more you harvest from the plant, the more it's going to signal to it during its growth cycle to continue to produce more cucumbers. So these ones are great. Now this one, if you wanted to do the little tiny baby pickled cucumbers, you could. This is still a little on the small side in my opinion. I wouldn't pick this guy yet. It's still pretty slender. It doesn't have much development. There's just not going to be a whole lot there, like the baby gherkin type pickles. But we come over here, and this one is a little bit larger. So this one you could begin to harvest if you wanted those really small little ones. I'm a gal that likes a lot of pickle though, and so I tend to wait until they're a little bit closer to this size to fill my jars. And just if I don't have quite enough pickles, I'd come out and throw a couple of these on top. But I don't usually pickle a full jar of pickles that are this tiny. I let them get a little bit bigger. Even with these up on the trellis, I still have quite a few leaves. And so looking through here, there are some cucumbers that I missed. So we see this guy. This guy is what we're considering to get the overripe. Now it's still green, but it is starting here, and this part wasn't in contact with the soil. This is starting to be signs of overripe. One, there's very little bumps and spines left, nor is there really much ridges. There's a tiny bit of a ridge still here, but it's what we call, it's bloated. I mean, look at the difference there, right? Quite a bit of difference, not just size, but actually our texture. And you're starting to see this green part is turning to light green, and then we're starting to get white. When it gets really overripe, it will actually start to turn yellow. So this is kind of borderline. What I would do with these size is, one, these can make great just slicing cucumbers. So this is big enough you can just simply slice it up and use it like you would more like an English cucumber. But this is what I would do for relishes or like some type of sauce or dip is where I would use this. I wouldn't pickle this as a whole cucumber, just because generally it's not going to be as crisp because it's almost at the overripe stage. So what we're looking for are these smaller cucumbers like this. However, usually at this stage you can still salvage it in some type of, like I said, relish or fresh eating or a sauce. So here you can kind of see a variance of these. This one, overripe, wouldn't use for pickling. This one is getting close. What I probably would do, I'm feeling along here, this one is still pretty firm, but I would slice this end off and look at the inside. These are all great. So from this size on up to here, because we still have ridges on this one, and I've still got plenty of spines. Now this has went to seed. But what this is cilantro. One of my favorite things about cilantro is, obviously you harvest the leaves when they're young for cilantro for eating. Now, no, cilantro doesn't taste like soap to everybody. So for those of us who don't have that part, we love the flavor of cilantro, especially in salsa. However, one of the great things about this is when it does go to seed, one, you can seed save that. This will become next year's cilantro if you choose to plant that. But the other great thing about cilantro is the seeds. Not only do they allow you to plant it again and not have to buy the seeds, however, cilantro seeds, it's actually coriander. So you get your coriander spice along with your seeds, which is really great. And that way I'm not upset or fussy when my cilantro starts to bolt. Cilantro is typically a little bit of a cool weather crop, and so once you start to hit the heat of summer, it bolts, which simply means it just goes to flower. You'll see that happen a lot with cool weather crops like broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, cabbage, etc. It's not always a loss because it's how it's replicating its seed. Again, we have a full seed saving course inside the Pioneering Today Academy. We'll put a link to that so you can look and see if we're open for membership to check that out and everything that's included in there. But it's not a total loss. Sometimes it's an extra food source. Same thing with dill. When your dill goes to flower and seed, then you get your dill seed on there. And that is obviously a culinary aspect, but it also will replant everything for you. So it's not a loss when things bolt and go to seed. It's actually can be a really good thing. So we're gonna go film the rest of the videos, and I hope to see you again soon.